The winter morning pressed against Seattle Central Station like a held breath. Snow fell in thick, silent curtains, transforming the vast glass canopy into a frosted cathedral of steel and light. Beneath that crystalline ceiling, hundreds of travelers moved in restless currents, boots clicking against polished tile suitcases, rolling in syncopated rhythm, voices rising and falling like distant waves. The air carried the sharp scent of coffee diesel exhaust and something else, something indefinable. The particular electricity that comes when strangers gather in temporary spaces, each carrying their own hidden weight. Among them walked Garrett Ashford. He moved differently than the others, not rushed, not casual. His gait held the deliberate economy of a man trained to conserve energy, to observe before acting, to read a room the way other men read newspapers. At 38, Garrett still carried the physical markers of his former life, shoulders broad enough to suggest capability, a frame lean from discipline rather than vanity. His hair was cut military short, dark brown, shot through with premature silver at the temples. A neatly trimmed beard framed a jaw that rarely smiled. His eyes gray as winter steel scanned the terminal with practiced efficiency. The Navy SEAL emblem still lived somewhere in his muscle memory, though the uniform had been gone for 3 years. Retired, medically discharged. The words still tasted like failure in his mouth, even though the shrapnel scar along his ribs had earned him the exit with honor. He'd traded tactical gear for the simple Navy jacket of Seattle Transit Security. The pay was a quarter of what he'd made in private contracting. The apartment was smaller. The purpose felt hollow. But he had Ranger. The German Shepherd moved at Garrett's left heel, a position so natural it seemed choreographed. 5 years old, 75 pounds of coiled muscle intelligence and loyalty, forged in places where bombs turned sand into glass and screaming into silence. Ranger's coat caught the pale morning light, black saddle across his back, gold and tan along his chest and legs the colors of burnt earth. His amber eyes missed nothing. The small scar on his right shoulder, barely visible beneath the fur marked where a piece of shrapnel had found him during their third deployment together. They'd both come home, broken in ways that didn't always show. The dog's ears swiveled forward, tracking sounds Garrett couldn't hear. His nose worked methodically, sorting through the thousand competing scents of humanity pressed into enclosed space. The dog didn't wear a vest today. This wasn't official canine work, but passengers gave him space anyway. Something in his bearing commanded respect. This was not a pet. This was a professional. Garrett checked his watch, 9:32. The morning rush had crested and broken. The 9:45 to Bar Harbor would board in 13 minutes. Platform 7. He made a mental note to walk that direction, complete the circuit. Standard patrol, nothing special. Morning, Ashford. Garrett turned. Owen Whitlock approached from the security office, coffee in hand, sandy hair still damp from a hasty shower. 29 years old and perpetually looking like he'd slept through his alarm. But the kid was sharp, good with technology, better with people than he gave himself credit for. Morning, Garrett replied. His voice came out rougher than intended. He hadn't talked to anyone yet today. Quiet shift. So far. Owen knelt, extending his hand toward Ranger. The dog sniffed politely but didn't move closer. Professional courtesy. Nothing more. Man, he's all business, Owen said, standing. Doesn't he ever just, I don't know, act like a regular dog? Garrett's expression didn't change. Would you trust a regular dog to do what he does? Owen considered this, then shook his head. Fair point. He sipped his coffee. Hey, you hear about that missing persons case, Seattle PD officer? Caldwell, yeah. 3 weeks now, just gone. Her boss was on the news yesterday saying they're following leads, but Owen shrugged. You ever work with her? No. Weird though, right? A cop just disappearing. She's only 27, whole career ahead of her. Garrett didn't answer. He'd learned long ago that weird was relative. The world was full of things that didn't make sense until suddenly, violently, they did. Anyway, Owen said, glancing at his watch, I'm on camera duty. Let me know if you need anything. Garrett nodded. Owen walked away, and the terminal swallowed him into its flowing crowd. Ranger's ears pricked forward suddenly. His body stiffened in that particular way that made Garrett's hand instinctively move toward his hip, where a sidearm used to rest. 3 years in civilian work, and the muscle memory still fired like a nerve remembering an old injury. What is it, boy? The dog's nose lifted, tested the air, his amber eyes fixed on something across the terminal near the waiting area for Platform 7. Garrett followed the line of sight. An elderly woman sat in a wheelchair near the large windows. She looked small, fragile. The kind of fragile that came not from a single blow, but from years of quiet accumulation loss piled on loss grief settling into bone. Her hair was silver thinning at the crown held back with a simple clip. She wore a gray wool coat that had been expensive once, perhaps 20 years ago, and a blue knitted scarf looped loosely around her thin neck. Her hands swollen at the knuckles with arthritis clutched a faded canvas bag to her chest. Nothing about her suggested threat, nothing about her warranted attention, but Ranger had gone absolutely still. Garrett had learned to trust this. In Kandahar and Helmand province, in a dozen places where trust was the currency between life and bleeding out in the sand, Ranger had proven himself. The dog didn't react to noise, didn't react to crowds, didn't react to authority or uniforms or loud voices. He reacted to something deeper, something chemical, something humans couldn't name but animals recognized like a scent on the wind. Easy, Garrett murmured, hand resting on the dog's head. But Ranger pulled forward, not aggressive, not hunting, something else. Urgent, insistent. The leash went taut. Garrett adjusted his grip, applying pressure without yanking. Ranger, heel. The command usually worked like a circuit closing. Immediate, absolute. Ranger knew 3 languages worth of commands and executed them with the precision of a soldier following orders. Not this time. The dog pulled harder, a low whine building in his throat. His hackles didn't rise, this wasn't aggression. But his entire body language screamed warning. Alert! Danger! Pay attention! Passengers nearby began to notice. A mother pulled her child closer. A businessman paused mid-stride, coffee halfway to his lips. Garrett moved quickly, crossing the terminal in smooth strides, Ranger pulling him forward like a compass needle locked on true north. The wheelchair grew larger in his vision. The old woman looked up, her face a map of worry lines and exhaustion. Her eyes were pale blue, watery with age or tears or both. 20 feet away. 15. Ranger's whine turned into a bark. It echoed through the station like a gunshot. Sharp. Explosive. A sound that didn't belong in this polished civilian space. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. The terminal's ambient noise, the rolling suitcases, the announcements, the thousand small sounds of transit seemed to pause, as if the building itself were holding its breath. The old woman flinched. Her hands tightened on the canvas bag. Please, she said, voice barely audible. Please make him stop. Garrett shortened the leash muscles, straining. Ranger, down. The dog barked again, louder, more insistent. His chest heaved. His eyes never left the woman, but there was no malice in his gaze. This was the bark he'd used in the field when he'd found IEDs buried under market stalls, when he'd detected chemical signatures invisible to human senses, when something was wrong in a way that required immediate action. Sir, what's happening? A security guard approached, young, nervous hand on his radio. I don't know yet, Garrett said. He knelt beside Ranger, bringing his face level with the dog's. Talk to me, partner. What are you telling me? The dog's breathing was rapid, controlled panic. He barked once more, then whined a sound so desperate it bordered on grief. The old woman had gone pale. Her lips trembled. I haven't done anything wrong, she whispered. I'm just waiting for my train. Platform 7. 9:45 to Bar Harbor. I have a ticket. She fumbled in her coat pocket with shaking hands. See? I have a ticket. Other passengers backed away, forming a loose circle. Smartphone cameras appeared. Someone muttered about calling the police. Garrett rose slowly, keeping his voice calm, level, the tone that worked on panicked civilians and wounded soldiers alike. Ma'am, I'm not accusing you of anything. My dog is trained to detect certain substances, chemicals, sometimes medical conditions. He's trying to tell me something. I don't have anything, she said, tears starting to track down her weathered cheeks. I'm 70 years old. I'm going to visit my husband's grave. That's all. Garrett studied her. Every instinct honed over 2 decades, half in the military, half in the sharp-edged world that came after, told him she was telling the truth. She believed what she was saying, but Ranger didn't lie. Ma'am, what's your name? Mildred. Mildred Brennan. She swallowed hard. Everyone calls me Millie. Millie, I'm Garrett Ashford. I work security here. He gestured to the young guard. This is Officer Patterson. We're not trying to scare you, but when my dog reacts like this, I have to take it seriously. Would you be willing to come with us to a private screening room just to make sure everything's okay? Millie's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Will I miss my train? I'll make sure you don't miss your train, Garrett said. It might have been a lie. He didn't know yet, but her fear was real, as fear made people do unpredictable things. I promise, we just need to understand what's setting Ranger off. She looked at the dim. Ranger had stopped barking, but he remained locked in position, every muscle tense, eyes fixed on the canvas bag in her lap. "All right," she whispered. "All right." The screening room was small, sterile, fluorescent lit. White walls, metal table, two chairs, a scanner cart in the corner. It smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Millie sat in her wheelchair, the canvas bag still clutched to her chest like a shield. Garrett stood near the door ranger at his heel. The dog's breathing had slowed, but his attention never wavered. Owen Whitlock arrived 3 minutes later, rolling in the portable scanning equipment. His casual demeanor had vanished, replaced by professional focus. "All right," he said, positioning the handheld detector. "Let's see what we've got." Millie set the bag on the table with visible reluctance. It was old canvas, military green, faded to the color of sage. The fabric showed wear at the corners. A brass zipper tarnished with age. No labels, no markings. Owen powered up the scanner. The device hummed to life, lights, blinking green across its display panel. He passed it slowly over the bag's surface, methodical, thorough. "No metal," he reported after the first pass. "No electronic signals. No." He frowned, adjusted a setting. "Hold on." "What?" Garrett asked. "There's something." Owen moved the scanner along the bag's base again. A yellow light blinked once, twice. "That's weird. I'm getting a faint transmission. Very low frequency. Could be interference, but—" Ranger growled, low, insistent. "Run it again," Garrett said. "Different frequency band." Owen adjusted the dial. The scanner's tone changed, rising in pitch. The yellow light became more insistent. "There," Owen said. "That's consistent with a microchip. GPS tracker, maybe. But it's tiny. Really tiny." He looked at Millie. "Ma'am, do you know what's in this bag?" "Just personal things." Her voice was barely a whisper. "A scarf I knitted. Some photographs of my husband. His dog tags from Desert Storm." "May we look inside?" She nodded, defeated. Owen unzipped the bag carefully. Inside, exactly what she'd described. A hand-knitted scarf, cream-colored soft. A plastic sleeve containing old photographs. A young couple on their wedding day. A man in navy dress uniform. Faded Polaroids of holidays and birthdays. Metal dog tags on a beaded chain. A small Bible, pages soft from decades of handling. Nothing suspicious, nothing wrong, but Ranger's body remained rigid as iron. "The chip's not inside," Owen said, examining the bag's interior. "It's in the lining." He pulled out a small folding knife. "Permission to cut the fabric." Garrett looked at Millie. She nodded again, something breaking behind her eyes. Owen made a careful incision along the bag's inner seam. The fabric parted, revealing a thin layer of batting. He worked the knife deeper, and something small and metallic glinted in the fluorescent light. "There," he breathed. With tweezers from his kit, Owen extracted the object and placed it on a glass examination tray. It was smaller than a grain of rice, black, sleek, sophisticated. Under magnification, an etching became visible on its surface. A serpent coiled around a staff. Garrett's blood went cold. "Do you recognize that symbol?" Owen asked. Garrett couldn't speak for a moment. His hand unconsciously moved to the scar on his ribs, the one that still ached when storms rolled in. "Yeah," he finally said. "I recognize it." "What is it?" "SEAL Medical Division. That unit was disbanded 8 years ago." Owen's eyes widened. "How does a GPS chip from a defunct military medical unit end up in an old lady's bag?" Garrett looked at Millie. She'd gone ghost white, hands pressed flat against the table. "Ma'am, I need you to tell me exactly how you got this bag. Who gave it to you?" "An old man," she whispered, "at the nursing home, Evergreen on Capitol Hill. He came a month ago, said he was with a veterans charity, said he knew William, my husband, said—" Her voice broke. "Said he could help me visit William's grave without worrying about the beater. Train tickets, hotel, everything. I just had to bring the bag to Bar Harbor. Someone would meet me there." "Did he give you a name?" "Harding, Vincent Harding." The name hit Garrett like a fist to the solar plexus. The room tilted slightly, then steadied. "Vincent Harding, you're sure?" "Yes, he had a scar on his hand, right hand, like a burn." She demonstrated, tracing a line across her palm. Garrett had to sit down. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Boss Owen's voice came from far away. "You okay?" "Get Captain Foster on the phone," Garrett managed. "Now." "What's going on?" "That chip isn't just tracking. It's a signature." Garrett's jaw clenched. "Vincent Harding was the chief medical officer in my unit. Brilliant surgeon, saved my life twice." He paused. "And killed at least one man I know of with experimental drugs." Millie made a small sound like air escaping from something collapsing. "Ma'am," Garrett said gently, "I need you to listen carefully. Did this man give you anything else? Anything to eat or drink? Any medication?" "No, just the bag," and she fumbled in her coat pocket, produced a small card. "This phone number. He said to call it when I arrived in Bar Harbor." Owen took the card, photographed it with his phone. "I'll run a trace." "Do it fast." Garrett stood, began pacing. Ranger tracked him with patient eyes. "If Harding's involved, this isn't simple trafficking. He's not working alone." "Sir, I don't understand," Millie gasped. A sharp, strangled sound. Her hand clutched at her chest, her face contorted. "Ma'am," Garrett moved fast, reaching her side. "Millie," her breathing came in shallow, rapid bursts. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the room's chill. I can't. Owen, get medical." Now, Owen bolted for the door, shouting into his radio. Garrett caught Millie as she slumped forward. Her pulse hammered against his fingers, rapid, irregular wrong. "Stay with me, Millie. Help's coming." Her eyes rolled back. Her body convulsed once violently, then went terrifyingly limp. Ranger barked, not warning this time. Alarm. The door burst open. Lena Martinez, one of the station's EMTs, rushed in with her kit. "What happened?" "Sudden onset, chest pain, altered consciousness." Garrett eased Millie back in the wheelchair, giving Lena space to work. Lena's hands moved with a practiced efficiency. Blood pressure, cuff pulse, oximeter, pen light, checking pupil response. BP's dropping, 80/50, pulse 120 and thready. She looked up, face grim. "We need transport, now." The next 20 minutes blurred into controlled chaos. Ambulance lights, radio chatter, the mechanical efficiency of emergency medicine practiced by people who'd done this 1,000 times but never grew casual about it. They loaded Millie onto a stretcher, strapped her down, started an IV line, oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. Garrett climbed into the ambulance before anyone could stop him. Ranger jumped in after taking position near the stretcher's base. "Sir, you can't," the paramedic began. "I'm all she's got right now," Garrett said quietly, "and she's going to need someone when she wakes up." The paramedic, a grizzled man in his 40s named Ray, studied him for a long moment. Saw something that made him nod. "Keep the dog under control." The ambulance howled into Seattle's streets. Inside, the world reduced to beeping monitors and Ray's calm voice calling vitals to the hospital over radio. Garrett held Millie's hand. Her skin was cold, papery, fragile as ancient parchment. Her eyes fluttered but didn't open. "Hang on," he murmured. "Just hang on." Ranger whined softly, pressing closer to the stretcher. His nose touched Millie's dangling hand, and for a moment her fingers twitched. Some instinct, deeper than consciousness, responding to warmth, to life, to the simple presence of another living creature. Portland General Hospital rose through the cold morning like a fortress of glass and steel. The emergency entrance swallowed them in a rush of automatic doors and urgent voices. A doctor in blue scrubs met them at the bay, 50-something gray, streaking his black hair, the kind of calm that came from seeing everything and being surprised by nothing. "What do we have?" he asked, already moving alongside the stretcher as they wheeled Millie inside. 70-year-old female, Ray reported. Sudden onset chest pain, loss of consciousness, hypotensive tachycardic. No known medical history. Possible ingestion of unknown substance. The doctor's eyes sharpened. "Ingestion? Explain." "I'll explain," Garrett said, matching their pace. "But I need to stay with her." The doctor glanced at him, took in the security uniform, the dog keeping perfect pace. "You're not family. I'm what she has." Something in Garrett's tone made the doctor nod. "Trauma 2. Let's move." The emergency room was organized chaos. Nurses converged. Monitors multiplied. Someone called for labs. Someone else wheeled in an ultrasound machine. The doctor, his name tag read, Dr. Andrew Morrison, took charge with quiet authority. "Let's get a full workup. CBC, comprehensive metabolic panel toxicology, screen cardiac enzymes. I want an EEG and portable chest x-ray." He positioned the ultrasound wand over Millie's abdomen, eyes fixed on the monitor. Garrett stood back, Ranger pressed against his leg. Watching, waiting. Morrison's brow furrowed. He adjusted the wand's angle. "That's unusual." "What?" Garrett stepped closer. The ultrasound image showed the shadowy landscape of internal organs, liver, kidneys, intestines. And something else, something that didn't belong. A smooth, dark shape, oblong, foreign. "Is that?" Morrison's voice trailed off. He increased magnification. "Get me a CT scan, priority." "What is it?" Garrett asked, though some part of him already knew. already understood with sick certainty. There's a foreign object in her lower intestine, upweten. Could be a blockage, but the shape is wrong. Too regular. Too. He met Garrett's eyes. Too deliberate. 20 minutes later, the CT images confirmed it. On the screen rendered in ghostly detail, a plastic pouch rested in Millie's intestinal cavity. The radiologist, a thin woman with sharp features, pointed to the image with a stylus. "That's not biological," she said. "It's manufactured, sealed, and judging by the density readings, it's filled with some kind of powder." Morrison's face had gone hard as stone. "You said possible ingestion of unknown substance. This isn't ingestion. This is smuggling." "She didn't know," Garrett said. "I'd stake my life on it. Someone made her a mule." Morrison studied the images. "And if that package ruptures—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "What's in it?" Garrett asked. "Won't know until we remove it, but based on the smuggling method and her symptoms, my guess is fentanyl. High grade, enough to kill her 20 times over if it leaks." The words hung in the sterile air like smoke from a fire no one could see yet. Garrett's hand found Ranger's head. The dog leaned into the touch, solid and warm and real, in a moment that felt increasingly unreal. "How long does she have?" Garrett asked quietly. "Hours, maybe less if that seal is compromised." Morrison turned to a nurse. "Prep her 3. We're going in now." "Wait," Garrett said. "There's something you need to know. This isn't random. She was recruited, targeted. Someone put that chip in her bag, convinced her to travel, and used her as a carrier." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "And the man behind it is connected to a disbanded military medical unit, which means this is bigger than one old woman." Morrison's jaw tightened. "That's a police matter. My job is to save her life." "I understand, but when she wakes up, if she wakes up, there will be people looking for her, people who expected her to deliver that package. Then I suggest you call whoever needs to know." Morrison gestured to the surgical team already assembling. "Because she's going under in 10 minutes. Garrett pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over the contacts. He scrolled past names he hadn't called in years. Stopped at one. Captain Linda Foster, Seattle Transit Security Director. Former Army MP. The kind of woman who'd eaten nails for breakfast in her youth and hadn't softened with age. The call connected after 2 rings. "Ashford, this better be important." "Ma'am, I need to report a Code Silver situation, and I need FBI involvement." A pause. "Explain." Garrett did, quickly, efficiently, leaving out nothing. The dog's reaction. The GPS chip. The name Vincent Harding. The foreign object in Millie's body. The implication of trafficking, of networks, of something vast moving beneath the surface of normal life. When he finished, Foster's voice had gone cold as winter. "Stay with her. I'm making calls. FBI will contact you within the hour." And Ashford. "Yes, ma'am?" "If this is what you think it is, if Harding is running an operation using elderly carriers, this is going to get ugly fast." "I know. You sure you want to be in the middle of it? You're 3 years retired. You've got enough ghosts." Garrett looked through the window into the surgical prep area. Millie lay unconscious on the table, small and fragile and alone. A team of strangers preparing to cut into her body to remove something evil she'd never chosen to carry. "She needs someone," he said simply. Foster sighed. "All right, keep me updated. And Garrett, watch your 6. People who traffic in human misery don't like witnesses." The line went dead. Garrett pocketed his phone and sat in one of the waiting room's uncomfortable plastic chairs. Ranger settled at his feet, head resting on Garrett's boot. Through the windows, the morning continued its slow progression toward noon. The world outside moved on oblivious. Trains departed, families traveled. Life continued in its ordinary way, unaware that here, in this sterile corridor, something darker had surfaced like a body rising from deep water. Garrett closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his lids, he saw faces. Fisher, young and eager, dying slowly from the inside while Harding took notes. Other faces, too. Brothers lost to IEDs and ambushes, and the quiet, insidious ways war found to kill you years after the shooting stopped. He'd thought he was done with that world. 3 years of ordinary life, of checking tickets and breaking up arguments and going home to an empty apartment where the most dangerous thing was whether he'd remember to buy milk. But Ranger had barked. Ranger. And now the door had opened again, and Garrett could see the old darkness waiting on the other side. "Whatever you found, boy," he murmured to the dog. "I hope you're ready for where it leads." Ranger's amber eyes opened, fixed on him with that unnerving intelligence that sometimes seemed almost human. And in that moment, Garrett understood. This wasn't an ending. This was barely a beginning. Somewhere out in the city, Vincent Harding was waiting. waiting for a phone call that wouldn't come, waiting for a delivery that would never arrive. And when he realized something had gone wrong, he would act. Men like Harding always did. The surgery took 3 hours. Garrett stayed in the waiting room, drinking bad coffee, pacing, checking his phone for updates that didn't come. Ranger stayed alert, watching the door. Watching Garrett, watching everything with the patient vigilance of a creature who'd learned that safety was an illusion and survival meant constant attention. Finally, Dr. Morrison emerged, still in surgical scrubs, mask pulled down around his neck. His face told the story before his mouth opened. "She's alive," he said. "Stable. The package was intact. We removed it without rupture. She's lucky." "What was in it?" Garrett asked, though he already knew. "Fentanyl, high purity, about 200 grams, street value maybe $50,000. Enough to kill a small town if distributed improperly." Morrison's expression hardened. Whoever did this to her, they were willing to let her die if something went wrong. "They probably counted on it," Garrett said quietly. "Dead carriers don't talk." Morrison looked at him for a long moment. "You've seen this before. Different form, same evil. The police are going to want to talk to her when she wakes." "FBI will get to her first," Garrett said. "This is bigger than Seattle PD can handle." "You know that for certain?" Garrett thought about the chip, the symbol. Vincent Harding's name rising from the past like a ghost with unfinished business. "Yeah," he said, "I know." Morrison nodded slowly. "She'll be in recovery for another hour, then ICU. You can see her once she's settled." "Thank you, doctor." Morrison turned to leave, then paused. "Your dog. He saved her life, you know. If he hadn't reacted," he shook his head, "she'd be on a train right now, and in 6 hours when that package ruptured from the stress she'd be dead. No one would have known why. Just another elderly person with a heart condition." "He's good at his job," Garrett said. "You both are." Morrison walked away, footsteps echoing down the corridor. Garrett sat back down. Ranger's weight against his leg was an anchor in a world that suddenly felt unmoored. His phone buzzed, a text from Owen. "Trace the number, goes to burner phone, last ping near Pier 17, sending you coordinates." Garrett pulled up the map. Pier 17, Old Warehouse District. Half the buildings abandoned or converted to storage. The kind of place where shipping containers stacked like children's blocks and questions weren't welcome. A second text arrived, this one from an unknown number. "Special Agent Diane Kowalski, FBI. Captain Foster briefed me. I'm 20 minutes out. Stay put. We need to talk." Garrett stared at the phone, at the coordinates, at the web of connections forming in his mind like a map sketched in shadow. 43 elderly people recruited in 18 months, 11 dead, and now Millie number 44 lying in ICU with her insides sewn back together and a hole in her life where trust used to be. But there was more. He could feel it. The way he'd felt ambushes coming in Helmand. The way the air changed before an IED detonated. Something bigger moving beneath the surface. He pulled up his contacts again. Found another name he hadn't called in years. Marcus Webb, former SEAL, now working private security in Portland. One of the few men from their unit who'd answered questions about Vincent Harding back when the investigation was still active. The call went to voicemail. Garrett didn't leave a message. Instead, he typed Harding's back. "Call me." Then he waited. An hour passed. 2. His phone rang. Unknown number. Garrett answered. "Mr. Ashford." A woman's voice. Professional, clipped, East Coast accent, maybe Boston. "This is Special Agent Diane Kowalski. I'm in the lobby. Can you meet me?" "On my way." Agent Kowalski was 42 and looked like she'd spent every one of those years earning respect in rooms that didn't want to give it. Blonde hair pulled back severely. Dark suit. Eyes that calculated angles and probabilities before you finished your first sentence. She stood near the information desk, briefcase in hand, studying the room like a general surveying a battlefield. "Agent Kowalski," Garrett said, extending his hand. Her grip was firm. "Mr. Ashford, we need to talk somewhere private." They found an empty conference room on the second floor. Kowalski spread a laptop on the table, pulled up files, organized her thoughts with the efficiency of someone used to operating under time pressure. "Captain Foster sent me everything you reported," she said. "I ran Vincent Harding through our database. He's been on our radar for 3 years. For what? Initially Medicare fraud, fake prescriptions, ghost clinics billing for services never rendered. Small-time grift, but persistent. Then 6 months ago, his name came up in a different context." She turned the laptop toward Garrett. The screen showed a file marked Operation Silent Shepherd. Beneath it, dozens of case numbers. Missing persons, mostly women, ages 22 to 31. Seattle, Portland, Spokane, Boise. 10 women missing in the last 18 months across 4 states, Kowalski said. Different backgrounds, different circumstances. Only the common factor that all vanished without a trace. No bodies, no witnesses, no evidence. Until now, Garrett said. Until now. She clicked to another file. 3 weeks ago, Seattle PD officer Jenna Caldwell was investigating a potential trafficking ring. She reported to her supervisor, Detective Clayton Merrick, that she'd found evidence of police involvement. 2 days later, she vanished. She's 27 years old. The name Merrick triggered something in Garrett's memory. Merrick, isn't he the one who was on the news about Caldwell's disappearance? The very same. He's been leading the search. Very concerned, very visible, very... She paused. Convincing. You think he's involved? I think it's a hell of a coincidence that the officer investigating police corruption reported to him and then disappeared. Kowalski pulled up another image. And I think this is why. The photo showed a shipping manifest. HV Medical Outreach. Container shipments. Dates. Destination. Vancouver. San Francisco. Mexico City. Harding runs a veterans charity, completely legitimate on paper. But these containers, she tapped the screen. These containers are moving through ports without inspection. They have special clearance, humanitarian aid medical supplies, except we pulled shipping records for similar charities. The weight is wrong. Wrong how? Too heavy. You don't need 3 tons of shipping weight for medical supplies that should weigh 500 pounds, unless you're shipping something else. Garrett felt the pieces clicking into place. You're shipping people. We think so, but we can't prove it. We can't get warrants. We can't search containers without probable cause. And every time we get close, the trail goes cold. She met his eyes. Until your dog barked at an old woman in a train station. The GPS chips. You're tracking the carriers. We were. Harding's smart. He knew we'd focus on trafficking victims. Young women. Vulnerable populations. So he pivoted. Started using elderly veterans, widows, people no one would suspect. People who'd do anything for help they couldn't otherwise afford. The women are still being moved, but now they're secondary cargo. Hidden, protected by carriers who look innocent. Jesus, Garrett breathed. Your Mrs. Brennan was probably told she was carrying medical supplies or personal effects. Maybe she didn't even know she'd been implanted. Harding's a surgeon. He could have done it under the guise of a medical procedure. Garrett stood, began pacing. Ranger's eyes tracked him. So what now? You have probable cause. You know where his operation is running. Why not shut it down? Because Harding's not working alone. We shut down Pier 17, he moves to Pier 23. We arrest him, someone else takes over. We need the whole network. Everyone involved, top to bottom. She closed the laptop. And we need someone inside. That's where I come in. That's where you come in. Kowalski studied him. Your record says you served with Harding, that you knew him well. I did. Would he trust you? He saved my life. I'd like to think that counts for something. Even if you're the reason his operation is falling apart, Garrett considered. Vincent Harding was a good man once, a great surgeon. He cared about his patients, about the mission. He paused. If he's doing this, something broke it taught him, something fundamental. And broken people, they want to justify themselves. They want someone to understand. You think you can make him talk? I think I can make him believe I'm willing to listen. Kowalski nodded slowly. Then we need to move fast. He's expecting a delivery. When it doesn't arrive, he'll know something's wrong. Could burn everything and run. Or he'll come looking. Also a possibility. She stood. I'm putting a protective detail on Mrs. Brennan. If Harding finds out she's alive, she's a liability. I'll stay with her. Mr. Ashford, you're a civilian now. You don't have to... I'll stay with her, Garrett said. Kowalski saw something in his face. Nodded. All right, but you follow my lead. This is an FBI investigation now. You're a witness, a consultant, not a cowboy. Understood. Good. She handed him a card. My direct line. Anything happens, anything you call immediately. They left the conference room. In the quarter hospital, life continued its endless rhythm. Beeping monitors, soft-soled shoes on linoleum, the medicinal smell of healing and dying happening simultaneously in different rooms. Garrett took the elevator to the ICU. Millie had been moved to a private room, curtains drawn, machines humming softly. She looked smaller in the hospital bed, smaller and older and more fragile than she'd seemed in the train station. An oxygen cannula ran beneath her nose. IV lines connected her to bags of clear fluid. Her eyes were closed, but not peacefully. Even in unconsciousness, her face held tension. Garrett pulled a chair close. Ranger settled at his feet, chin resting on his paws. "You're going to be okay," Garrett said quietly, knowing she couldn't hear. "I promise. Whatever happens next, you're not alone." Outside, the afternoon light began to fade. Somewhere in the city, Vincent Harding was checking his phone, waiting for a call that wouldn't come, making decisions that would ripple outward like stones thrown into dark water. And somewhere in a container in a basement, in some lightless place where hope went to die, 10 women waited for rescue they didn't know was coming. Garrett leaned back in the uncomfortable chair and closed his eyes. The war, it seemed, had found him again after all. Millie Brennan woke to whiteness, white ceiling tiles, white walls, white sheets pulled up to her chin, the sterile smell of disinfectant, and something else, something chemical and vaguely sweet that made her stomach turn. She tried to move and discovered her body wouldn't cooperate. Everything felt distant, wrapped in cotton, like she was watching herself from somewhere far away. A shadow moved at the edge of her vision. She turned her head, the motion took enormous effort, and found a man sitting in the chair beside her bed. Dark hair, gray eyes, the security officer from the train station. "What was his name?" "Easy," he said, voice low and careful. "You're in Portland General. You had surgery. You are going to be okay." Garrett. That was it. Garrett Ashford. "What?" Her voice came out as a croak. Her throat felt like sandpaper. He held a cup of water with a straw to her lips. She drank gratefully. The cool liquid eased the burning but did nothing for the deeper ache spreading through her abdomen. "What happened?" she managed. "What do you remember?" Millie closed her eyes. Fragments returned, the train station, the dog barking. The terrible moment when her chest had seized, when pain had exploded through her like lightning, when the world had tilted and gone dark. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I was just going to Bar Harbor. To see William." "I know." Garrett's expression held something she couldn't quite name. Pity maybe, or anger on her behalf. "Mrs. Brennan, Millie, the man who gave you that bag wasn't helping you. He was using you. Using me for what? To smuggle drugs, high-grade fentanyl. He surgically implanted a package inside your body. You've been carrying it for weeks, maybe longer." The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Millie stared at him, searching for signs of a cruel joke. But his face remained serious. Sad even. "That's impossible," she said. "I would have known. I would have felt. You were probably told you needed a minor medical procedure, something routine. You trusted him because he said he knew your husband." Garrett leaned forward slightly. "Vincent Harding, that's his real name. He's a doctor, a surgeon, and he's been doing this to people like you for months. People like you. Elderly, alone, desperate." Millie's hand moved to her stomach, touched the bandage beneath her hospital gown. The surgical site was real. The pain was real, which meant everything else. "Oh God," she breathed. "Oh my God." "I'm sorry," Garrett said it quietly. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." Tears came then, hot and shameful. At 70 years old, Millie had thought she understood the world, had thought she'd seen enough to recognize danger to protect herself. But she'd been lonely, so desperately lonely. And when the nice old man with the kind smile had offered help, had spoken William's name with familiarity, had promised her one last trip to say goodbye properly, she'd been a fool. "The women," she said, suddenly remembering what Garrett had told her before. "You said something about women. Missing women." "Yes." Were they like me? Were they all?" "No." Garrett's jaw tightened. "You were a carrier, a decoy. The women Harding is moving aren't willing participants. They're victims. And we think there are 10 of them still out there." Millie felt something shift inside her, something that had nothing to do with surgical incisions. "Then you have to find them." "We're working on it." "How?" Garrett hesitated. "The FBI is involved now. There's an agent Kowalski coordinating with local police, but the operation is careful, well protected. We need to move slowly." "Slowly?" Millie's voice hardened. "How many more women will disappear while you move slowly?" "Mrs. Brennan, my husband was a SEAL." She said the words coming out stronger now. "Operation Desert Storm. He used to tell me stories about missions, about the rules of engagement." She met Garrett's eyes. He said there was one rule that mattered more than all the others: you never leave people behind, no matter what. No, you never abandon your own. This isn't the same. Those women are someone's daughter, someone's sister, maybe someone's mother. Millie pushed herself up slightly, ignoring the spike of pain. That man used me to hurt them. Whether I knew it or not, I helped him. So I'm going to help you stop him. You almost died. But I didn't. Her hand found his, gripped with surprising strength. William used to say that soldiers don't quit just because something's hard. They quit when they're dead. And I'm not dead. Garrett studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her face made something change in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. No, he agreed. You're not. A knock interrupted them. Agent Kowalski entered her severe suit, somehow looking crisp despite the late hour. She took in the scene, Millie awake, Garrett holding her hand, and nodded once. Mrs. Brennan, I'm glad you're awake. We need to ask you some questions. I'll answer whatever you need, Millie said. Good. Kowalski pulled out a small recording device. Let's start with Vincent Harding. Tell me everything you remember about meeting him. The interrogation, gentle but thorough, took 40 minutes. Millie described the encounter at Evergreen Nursing Home. The way Harding had approached during afternoon activities, introduced himself as a volunteer with Veterans Support Network. How he'd known details about William that only someone who'd served would know. The invitation to coffee in the cafeteria. The conversation about grief, about the cost of train tickets, about a program that helped widows visit military cemeteries. He seemed so kind, Millie said, voice breaking slightly. He talked about his own wife, said she'd passed 5 years ago, said he understood what it was like to be alone. Did he mention any medical procedures? Kowalski asked. He said the nursing home offered free health screenings, basic checkup, blood pressure, cholesterol, that sort of thing. I went because, she swallowed hard, because I hadn't been to a doctor in 2 years. I couldn't afford it. And during the screening, they gave me something to help me relax, said it was for anxiety. I remember lying down, then waking up an hour later. They said everything looked fine, gave me some vitamins, told me to take them every day. Garrett and Kowalski exchanged glances. Those weren't vitamins, Kowalski said. They were anti-rejection drugs, to keep your body from attacking the foreign object. Millie closed her eyes. The violation felt complete now. They'd cut her open, placed something inside her, sewn her back together, all while she slept, trusting them. How many others? She asked quietly. We don't know exactly, but we've identified 43 people who received similar screenings at various facilities over the last 18 months. 11 died. We believe the packages ruptured. What happened to them? The deaths were listed as natural causes, heart attacks, strokes. No one investigated. Kowalski's voice held barely controlled anger. People see an elderly person die and assume it's just time. No one looks deeper. But you did. Not soon enough. Millie opened her eyes. The phone number. The bus, the one Harding gave me. Did you trace it? Burner phone, last pinged near Pier 17, Warehouse District. Kowalski pulled up a map on her tablet. We believe that's where the operation is centered, but we can't move without proof, can't search without a warrant, and everyone involved is careful, very careful. What about the women? Can't you track them? If they have GPS chips like yours, yes. But the chips need to be active, broadcasting, and we've only found signal traces, nothing solid enough to pinpoint locations. Millie stared at the map, at the cluster of buildings near the waterfront. Somewhere in that maze of concrete and steel, women waited, scared, hurt, alone, just like she'd been alone. I can help, she said suddenly. Mrs. Brennan, I was supposed to call that number when I arrived, when I delivered the bag. Millie's mind was working now, pushing past pain and medication. Harding doesn't know I'm here. He doesn't know what happened. If I call him, if I tell him there was a delay, that I'm arriving late, he'll know something's wrong, Garrett said. He's too smart for that. Maybe, but he's also desperate. You said so yourself. Millie looked between them, and desperate people make mistakes. Kowalski considered this. It's too dangerous. If he suspects, what's he going to do when I'm in a hospital? Under guard. He can't get to me here. Millie's voice strengthened. But if I can draw him out, get him to say something incriminating, you'd be wearing a wire, recording a conversation with a man who's already tried to kill you. He didn't try to kill me. He just didn't care if I lived or died. There's a difference. Millie met Kowalski's eyes. I'm 70 years old. I've buried my husband, my parents, my sister. I've lived through more pain than you can imagine. And I've spent the last 5 years waiting to die because I couldn't think of a single reason to keep going. Her jaw set. This is a reason. Silence filled the room. Outside, a siren wailed past. Inside, 3 people stared at each other, weighing risks against desperate need. Finally, Kowalski nodded. All right, but we do this my way. Full surveillance. The moment something feels wrong, we pull you out. Agreed. And one more thing. Kowalski's expression hardened. If this works, if we get Harding to incriminate himself, you're going to have to testify, which means he'll know you cooperated. There could be retaliation. Let them try, Millie said simply. Garrett stood paced to the window. The afternoon light had turned gray, threatening rain. When on? He asked without turning. Tomorrow, Kowalski said. We need time to set up, get the equipment in place, brief the team. I want to be there. Mr. Ashford, this is an FBI operation. I want to be there, he repeated, turning to face her. Harding knows me. If something goes wrong, I might be able to talk him down. Or he might shoot you on sight. That's a risk I'm willing to take. Kowalski studied him. You two have history. He saved my life, twice. And he killed someone I considered a brother. Garrett's voice went flat. Yeah, we have history. Fine, but you follow orders. No heroics. Understood. They left Millie to rest, promising to return in the morning. But sleep wouldn't come. She lay in the dark, listening to machines beep and hiss, thinking about the phone number in her coat pocket, about the voice that would answer, about what she would say to the man who'd cut her open and filled her with poison and sent her away with a smile. At the foot of her bed, something moved. She startled, then relaxed as she recognized the shape. Ranger had stayed behind. He'd positioned himself between her and the door, amber eyes reflecting the hall light. Hey, boy, Millie whispered. The dog's ears swiveled toward her voice, but he didn't move otherwise. On duty, protecting. You knew, she said softly, before anyone else. You knew something was wrong. Ranger's tail moved once, a small acknowledgement. Thank you, Millie said, for not giving up on me. The dog settled his head on his paws, still watching the door, still alert. Millie closed her eyes and finally slept. Morning came gray and cold. Garrett arrived at 6 with coffee and a change of clothes, simple sweats, and a soft shirt that wouldn't irritate her surgical site. Age and Kowalski appeared at 7 with a technical team carrying equipment in unmarked cases. They transformed Millie's hospital room into a command center. Cameras, microphones, recording equipment. A technician fitted Millie with a tiny wire that clipped to her collar, virtually invisible. Audio only, Kowalski explained. We'll be listening in real time. The moment you say the code phrase, I need to rest, we move in. Understood. Understood. And remember, let him talk. People like Harding, they want to explain themselves. They want someone to understand their reasoning. So give him space. Don't push. Just listen. Millie nodded. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her phone. The battery was nearly dead. No one had thought to charge it, but enough power remained for one call. She pulled out the card Harding had given her. The number was written in neat, precise handwriting. Doctor's handwriting. Ready? Kowalski asked. No, Millie said honestly, but let's do it anyway. She dialed. The phone rang once, twice. On the third ring, someone answered. Yes, a man's voice, older, tired, not Harding. I'm calling about a delivery, Millie said, keeping her voice steady. For Bar Harbor, I was supposed to arrive yesterday, but there was a delay. Train trouble. I'm arriving today instead. A pause. Who is this Millie Brennan? Dr. Harding told me to call this number when... Wait. The line went quiet, muffled voices in the background. Then a different voice came on. Deeper, more authoritative. Mrs. Brennan, this is Detective Merrick, Seattle PD. Millie's eyes flew to Kowalski, who gestured frantically. Keep talking. I'm sorry, Millie said. I think I have the wrong number. No, you have exactly the right number. Merrick's voice held something cold. Dr. Harding is concerned about you. You missed your check-in. We were worried something might have happened. I'm fine, just delayed. The train... Where are you now, Mrs. Brennan? I'm at a hotel in Portland. I thought I should rest before continuing. Which hotel? Millie hesitated. Kowalski wrote something on a notepad, held it up. Riverside Inn. The Riverside Inn, Millie said, on Morrison Street. I see. A long pause. Mrs. Brennan, I'm going to need you to stay exactly where you are. Dr. Harding would like to speak with you in person to make sure you're all right. That's not necessary. I insist. The warmth had left Merrick's voice entirely. In fact, I'm sending someone to pick you up right now. They'll be there in 30 minutes. Wait in the lobby. The line went dead. Millie lowered the phone slowly. He's sending someone. Perfect, Kowalski said, already moving. Everyone move out. We're setting up at the riverside. Millie, you'll be transported there with a protection detail. We'll have agents in the lobby and the rooms above and below in the parking lot. Harding or whoever he sends won't get within 10 feet of you. Unless that's exactly what we want, Garrett said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. If we grab whoever Merrick sends, Harding goes underground, Garrett continued. We lose the bigger fish. But if we let them take Millie under complete surveillance with tracking devices, they'll lead us straight to the operation. Absolutely not, Kowalski said. That's too dangerous. It's the only way to find those women, Garrett argued. You said it yourself, we can't search without probable cause. But if they take Millie to wherever they're keeping the others, we have all the cause we need. And if something goes wrong, if they detect the wire, the trackers, then you move in, fast. They looked at Millie. Her face had gone pale, but her jaw was set. He's right. It's the only way. Mrs. Brennan, those women have been waiting for weeks, maybe months. How much longer should they wait while we play it safe? Millie's hands clenched the sheets. Use me, please. Kowalski closed her eyes, thinking. When she opened them, her expression was grim. All right, but we're going deep. Multiple tracking devices, clothing, shoes, even subdermally, if you'll consent, audio and GPS, and a full tactical team ready to move the second we have a location. Do it, Millie said. The next 2 hours blurred into preparation. They moved Millie to the Riverside Inn, actually moved her in a wheelchair, looking frail and sick, and exactly like what she was, an elderly woman recovering from surgery. The hotel staff had been briefed, the lobby cleared of civilians, every room on the second floor occupied by FBI personnel. Millie sat in a chair near the window wearing fresh clothes embedded with GPS chips. A second tracking device had been injected under the skin of her forearm, a simple procedure that took 30 seconds and hurt less than a vaccination. The wire was new, better hidden, sewn into the collar of her cardigan. Garrett and Ranger positioned themselves in the room directly above hers. Through the floor, they could hear the agents moving, speaking in low voices. Ranger lay near the window, occasionally lifting his head to sniff the air. You don't like this either, do you, boy? Garrett murmured. The dog's ears flattened slightly. Agreement. Garrett's phone buzzed. A text from Kowalski, vehicle approaching. Black SUV, tinted windows, 2 occupants. He moved to the window, careful not to disturb the curtain. Below, a sleek Escalade pulled into the parking lot. 2 men emerged. Both wore dark suits. Both moved with the particular alertness of people who carried concealed weapons and knew how to use them. They entered the lobby. Through the wire, Garrett heard Millie's voice. Are you from Dr. Harding? Yes, ma'am. The voice was professional, polite. We're here to take you somewhere safe, somewhere you can rest properly. Where? Not far, just a short drive. I don't know if I should. Mrs. Brennan, please. Dr. Harding is very concerned. He just wants to make sure you're all right. A pause, then. All right, let me get my things. Garrett watched as they escorted Millie to the SUV. She moved slowly, carefully, every inch, the fragile old woman. They helped her into the back seat with surprising gentleness. Professional kidnappers, Garrett thought, experienced at handling human cargo without damage. The SUV pulled away. Immediately, 3 unmarked FBI vehicles fell into loose formation behind it, maintaining careful distance. Kowalski's voice came through Garrett's earpiece. All units stay back. Let them think they're clean. GPS shows them heading north on I-5. Ashford, you're with me. Garrett and Ranger took the stairs down 2 at a time. Kowalski waited in an unmarked sedan, engine running. They pulled into traffic, joining the tail. Owen's voice crackled through the comms from the mobile command center. GPS is holding steady. Still tracking? Signal strength excellent. Through the wire, they could hear Millie breathing, the soft hum of tires. One of the men spoke. How are you feeling, Mrs. Brennan? Tired, confused. What's this about? Just precautions. Dr. Harding will explain everything. The SUV drove for 23 minutes, heading into the industrial district south of the city. Warehouses, shipping containers, the smell of seawater and rust. Finally, it turned into a gated lot near Pier 17. They're stopping, Kowalski reported into her radio. All units hold position. Do not, I repeat, do not approach until we have confirmation of location. The SUV parked. Doors opened. Garrett heard Millie's voice, slightly strained. Where are we? Just inside. We have a medical facility. Dr. Harding wants to examine you. Make sure the procedure is healing properly. What procedure? Ma'am, please. This way. Footsteps. The sound of a metal door opening, then closing. The audio quality changed, more echo suggesting an enclosed space. A warehouse, Garrett thought, or something similar. Millie's voice came through clearly now. I need to rest. I need to rest for a moment. Code phrase. All units go, Kowalski shouted. The sedans surged forward, followed by the tactical vans. They breached the gate in seconds, tires screaming. FBI agents poured out, weapons drawn, moving with practiced efficiency. Federal agents' hands where we can see them. Garrett followed Ranger at his side. The warehouse door stood open. Inside, the space was dark, divided by shipping containers stacked like walls. Emergency lights flickered on as the team swept through. Clear left. Clear right. We've got stairs. Garrett moved toward the stairwell, following the sound of voices. Below, in what must have been a basement-level light, spilled from an open doorway. He descended quickly, weapon drawn. When had Kowalski given him a weapon? Ranger, ahead of him, nose working. The dog stopped. Growled. Not warning. Discovery. Garrett rounded the corner and stopped cold. The room was large, 50 feet by 30, divided into sections by chain-link fencing. Medical equipment lined the walls, and in the center, arranged in 2 rows, were shipping containers, the kind used for cargo but modified. Windows cut into the sides, air vents, padlocks on the doors, 8 containers, 8 prisons. FBI, come out with your hands visible. One of the shots from the SUV stumbled backward, hands up. Don't shoot, I'm just security, I don't know anything. But Garrett wasn't looking at him. He was looking at the containers, at the faces pressed against the small windows. Pale, terrified, alive. Kowalski, he said into his mic, we've got them, we've got the women. Owen burst into the basement behind the tactical team, laptop in hand. I've got the server downloading everything before they can wipe it. Kowalski appeared at Garrett's side, already issuing orders. Get bolt cutters, open these containers. Medical team standing by. The next minutes were controlled chaos. The containers opened one by one. Women stumbled into the light, blinking, crying, disbelieving. 8 containers total. Kowalski counted through the comm. 2 victims per container in 6 of them. Single occupants in 2. That's 10 total. One of the women collapsed as she emerged. An agent caught her. I've got Jenna Caldwell, Officer Caldwell, you're safe now. Jenna, 27 years old, with dark circles under her eyes and bruises on her wrists, looked up with hollow recognition. Merrick, she whispered. It was Merrick all along. A commotion near the stairs drew Garrett's attention. More agents descending, weapons drawn, someone shouting. Then a figure moved in the shadows near the back wall. Garrett spun, weapon raised, then froze. Vincent Harding stepped into the light, hands raised. He looked like a ghost of the man Garrett remembered, gaunt, trembling, tears tracking down his weathered face. His right hand bore the distinctive burn scar Millie had described. Don't shoot, Harding said hoarsely. Please, I'm here to help. Help, Garrett's voice was ice. You did this. I know what I am. Harding pulled a key ring from his pocket, tossed it to the floor between them. Those opened the remaining padlocks. All of them. And this, he held up a small device finger hovering over a button. Emergency beacon. FBI already has the coordinates, but this will send confirmation. Proof that I cooperated. Why? Garrett asked. Why now? Because my daughter is dead. Because I have nothing left to lose. Because, Harding's voice broke. Because I can't save her. But I can save them. He pressed the button. Immediately, footsteps thundered from above. A man's voice screaming, "What did you do? Harding, what did you do?" Detective Clayton Merrick appeared at the top of the stairs, gun-drawn, face contorted with rage. A gunshot. Harding staggered, hand clutching his side. Blood spread between his fingers, dark against his lab coat. Go, he gasped to Garrett. Get them out, I'll slow him down. Garrett hesitated, one heartbeat, then grabbed the keys and ran toward the containers. Behind him, Harding collapsed against a container wall, sliding down slowly, leaving a red smear. He smiled through the pain as FBI tactical agents swarmed up the stairs toward Merrick. Fisher, he whispered to the empty air. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Merrick fired twice more wildly before 3 agents tackled him. His gun clattered across the floor. Handcuffs clicked. You're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit human trafficking, and about 40 other charges I haven't thought of yet, Kowalski said coldly. Garrett knelt beside Harding. The wound was bad, lower abdomen bleeding heavily. He pressed his hand against it, trying to stem the flow. Stay with me, Vincent. Medical's coming. Too late for that. Harding's voice was fading. Garrett, tell them. Tell them about the shipping manifest. The buyers. It's all on the server. Owen can find it. His hand found Garrett's. I tried to be good. After everything, I tried. I know, Garrett said quietly. Fisher, he was 20, just 20, and I killed him because I thought I was smarter than I was. Tears mixed with the blood. Lily, she was 18, never got to graduate, never got to see who she might have become. Treatment lasted 14 months. She fought so hard, but 6 months ago her body just gave up. And I watched her die knowing every day of those treatments was paid for with blood money. Vincent, you pulled people from fire, I put them in it. Harding's breathing turned ragged. Promise me you'll get the other two, the ones on the ship. What ship? Container vessel. Eastern Promise. Left Vancouver yesterday. 2 women. PCF 7829. Owen. Owen can track it. His grip tightened. Promise. I promise. Harding's eyes closed. His hand went slack. Paramedics arrived, but Garrett already knew. He'd seen death enough times to recognize its signature. Millie appeared at his side, supported by an agent. She looked down at Harding's body. Did he help? Yeah, Garrett said. At the end, he helped. William always said redemption was possible, even for the worst of us. Millie's voice was soft. I hope he was right. They found Millie sitting on a crate after the body had been removed, breathing hard, looking pale but determined. Ranger walked to her, pressed his head against her knee. She touched his fur with trembling fingers. How many? She asked. 8 here. 2 more on a container ship headed to Vancouver. Owen's coordinating with the Coast Guard now. You'll get them back. We'll try. Millie nodded, closed her eyes. Good, that's good. Outside, sirens announced the arrival of more emergency vehicles. Inside, FBI agents processed the scene with methodical efficiency. Women were wrapped in blankets, given water, examined by medics. Most were too shocked to speak. Others wept. One laughed high and brittle, the sound of sanity stretched to breaking. Kowalski approached Garrett, her expression grim. Harding wasn't lying. Owen pulled files from the server. This operation goes deeper than we thought. 14 officers across 4 states, all taking payoffs from the trafficking ring. Who's running it? Merrick was the face, but there's someone above him, someone with serious money and connections. We'll find them. She paused. And the ship Coast Guard is scrambling a cutter now. If we're lucky, we'll intercept before it reaches international waters. And if we're not, then we coordinate with Canadian and Philippine authorities. It'll take longer, but we'll get them back. Garrett stood, every muscle aching. I should check on Millie. She's remarkable, Kowalski said. What she did today, most people wouldn't have that courage. Most people haven't lost everything and found a reason to care again. They walked back through the warehouse. Millie was being loaded onto a stretcher despite her protests. I can walk, she insisted. You can walk at the hospital, the paramedic said firmly, after we make sure nothing reopened. Garrett touched her shoulder. You did good today. We did good, she corrected. She looked at Ranger. All of us. The ambulance took her away, lights flashing. Garrett and Ranger stood in the parking lot as dawn broke over the industrial district. The sky turned from black to gray to pale blue. A new day arriving whether anyone was ready or not. Owen jogged over, laptop still in hand. Coast Guard found the ship. They're boarding now. I'll know in 10 minutes if the container's there. Keep me posted. Owen nodded and jogged away. Garrett looked down at Ranger. The dog looked back, amber eyes steady in the growing light. Long day, Garrett murmured. Ranger's tail moved once. Acknowledgement. Think we'll do it again? The tail moved again. Yeah, Garrett said. Me too. His phone buzzed. A text from Owen got them. Both alive. Coast Guard is bringing them to Vancouver General. Garrett closed his eyes. Let the relief wash over him like rain. 10 women. All accounted for. All alive. It was more than he'd dared hope for. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and fluorescent light. Vincent Harding sat across from Agent Kowalski, hands cuffed to the metal table, looking older than his 58 years. Deep lines carved his face like water cutting through stone. His gray hair was disheveled, his lab coat stained with something dark at the cuffs, but his eyes remained clear, sharp, the eyes of a man who'd made his peace with consequences. Wait. Garrett blinked, memory catching up to present. Harding was dead. He died in the warehouse with his last breath spent on redemption. This wasn't Harding. This was Detective Clayton Merrick. The interrogation room came back into focus. Merrick sat where Garrett's exhausted mind had placed Harding, for a confused moment. 52 years old, gray hair cropped military short, square jaw. The kind of face that inspired trust that suggested competence and integrity. A face that had hidden evil for years. Kowalski laid out photographs, crime scene images, missing persons reports, the faces of women who'd vanished into nothing. 8 women recovered from the warehouse, Kowalski said, voice flat. Professional. Jenna Caldwell among them. Seattle PD officer. The one who was investigating your operation before she disappeared. She's 27 years old, whole life ahead of her, and you put her in a cage. Merrick glanced at the photo of Jenna. Something flickered in his expression. Not remorse, not even recognition, just cold calculation. Assessing, measuring. 2 more containers were empty but recently occupied, Kowalski continued, which means 2 women had already been shipped. Coast Guard intercepted them. They're alive, detective, all 10 women alive. Your operation is finished. Am I supposed to feel guilty? Merrick's voice carried no emotion. Apologize, beg for mercy. Most people would. Most people are hypocrites. Merrick leaned back as far as the cuffs allowed. You think you've won something here? Saved some women, exposed corruption. He shook his head. This operation ran for 6 years. 6 years. And you know how many complaints were filed, how many reports were made? 0. Because everyone involved, the shipping companies, the port authorities, the politicians, everyone was making money. Everyone was looking the other way. That doesn't make it right. It makes it reality. Merrick's jaw tightened. I served 28 years in law enforcement. 28 years of watching criminals get rich while cops scraped by, of seeing defense attorneys get murderers released on technicalities, of arresting the same people over and over because the system is broken. His voice rose. So I stopped pretending, stopped believing in justice that only works for people with money and lawyers. And I took what I could take while I could take it. You trafficked women? Kowalski said flatly. Sold them like cargo. I provided a service to people who were willing to pay, no different than any other business. Those women were human beings. Those women were already lost. Addicts, homeless, illegal immigrants, people the system had already abandoned. Merrick leaned forward. I didn't create the problem. I just profited from it. And you know what? If I hadn't, someone else would have. Someone else will. Because this is what the world is now. Garrett watched through the 2-way mirror, Ranger sitting quietly at his feet. Beside him stood Captain Linda Foster, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Do you feel anything? Kowalski asked. Any remorse, any recognition that what you did was wrong? Merrick met her eyes. I feel disappointed that I got caught. That's what I feel. The interrogation continued for another hour, but nothing changed. Merrick never broke, never confessed beyond what the evidence already proved, never showed anything resembling humanity. He was a man who'd sold his soul so long ago he'd forgotten he had ever had one. When it ended, Garrett walked outside into cold January rain, stood on the sidewalk and let water soak through his jacket, needing to feel something clean. Foster found him there. You all right? I wanted him to have a reason, Garrett said, something that explained how a cop becomes that. But he doesn't. He's just evil, Foster finished. Sometimes people are just evil. No trauma, no justification. Just choices made over and over until they become who you are. How do you stop that? How do you fight against people like him? You do exactly what you did. You trust your dog. You save who you can save. You tell the truth when everyone else is lying. She put a hand on his shoulder. You don't quit. They stood together in the rain, 2 people who'd seen too much and kept going anyway. 3 days later, Garrett returned to the hospital. Millie had been moved from ICU to a regular room, sitting up in bed, color returning to her face. The television played news coverage of the arrest, Merrick being led away in handcuffs, FBI agents raiding homes across 4 states, officials promising full investigations into police corruption. They're calling me a hero, Millie said when Garrett entered. She muted the TV, saying I risked my life to save them. You did. I was just trying to matter, to do something that meant something. Her voice softened. William always said the measure of a life wasn't how long you lived, but what you did with the time you had. He was right, Millie smiled. He usually was. She paused. I heard about Dr. Harding, that he helped at the end, that he died. Yeah. Do you think he found peace? I don't know, maybe, or maybe he just found a way to stop running from what he'd done. Garrett sat in the chair beside her bed. Agent Kowalski gave me a letter he'd written before everything happened. I haven't read it yet. Why not? Because I don't know if I want to forgive him, and I'm afraid that's what he wants. Then don't forgive, Millie said gently. But maybe understand, there's a difference. Ranger patted over to rested his head on the bed near Millie's hand. She stroked his ears absently. What happens now? She asked. You recover. We investigate. There are 14 officers involved in this operation. They're being rounded up now. There will be trials, federal cases. It's going to take months, maybe years to untangle everything. And the women, all receiving treatment, therapy. Jenna Caldwell is already talking about joining Agent Kowalski's new task force. The others, he paused. They'll need time, but they're alive. That's what matters. And you, what happens to you? I go back to work, I guess, check tickets, break up arguments, try to pretend the world is normal. Will you be able to pretend? Probably not, Millie smiled faintly. Good. Normal is overrated, and the world needs people who can't pretend. She paused. Will you visit after I'm released? I'd like to know how the story continues. I'll visit, Garrett promised. A nurse entered with medication. Garrett stood to leave, but Millie caught his hand. Thank you, she said, for not giving up on me, for believing an old woman could still do something important. You didn't need me to believe, Garrett said. You just needed a chance to show what you'd always been. He left her sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. 6 months passed. The investigation expanded like ripples from a stone thrown in water. 14 officers arrested, charges filed, 3 assistant district attorneys implicated in cover-ups. A Seattle city councilman discovered to have accepted campaign donations from shell companies. The corruption ran deeper than anyone had imagined, roots extending through years of silent compromise and willful blindness. The final tally was staggering: 54 arrests across 4 states, 14 officers, 23 facilitators, shipping company employees, port officials, medical staff, 17 buyers and traffickers, 19 additional victims recovered through the seized databases, $300,000 in assets seized and redistributed to victim support funds. Agent Kowalski established the Pacific Northwest Human Trafficking Task Force with federal funding. Jenna Caldwell joined as a specialist in victim recovery, using her experience to help others navigate the aftermath of trauma. The task force had already made 47 additional arrests and recovered 19 more victims in its first 6 months. Garrett returned to work, checked tickets, patrolled platforms, tried to find rhythm in ordinary routine. But now he saw things differently, noticed elderly travelers with more attention, watched for signs of distress, of coercion, of people being moved against their will. Rangers seemed to sense the change, too more alert during patrols, testing the air with greater frequency. They'd become hunters who couldn't quite remember how to be anything else. On a warm July morning, Garrett drove to the Maplewood Senior Living Facility. Ranger, riding shotgun, both enjoying the rare sunshine. Millie met him at the entrance, walking with a cane, but steady on her feet. She'd gained weight, the gauntness replaced by healthy color. Her eyes, once shadowed with pain and loneliness, now held something different. Purpose, maybe, or peace. You're late, she said with a smile. Traffic. Liar, you just drive slow. They walked the grounds together, Ranger ranging ahead, tail wagging at butterflies and squirrels. Millie talked about her new home, about the friends she'd made, about the support group for elderly crime victims she'd started facilitating. There are more of us than you'd think, she said. People who were targeted because they were vulnerable, because they were alone. We meet twice a week, share stories, help each other. That's good, Garrett said. It is. She paused. I heard about the task force, that they've saved more people, that Jenna is doing well. She is. She's remarkable. Uses what happened to her to help others. Good. She deserves happiness after everything. They reached a bench overlooking a small pond, sat together in comfortable silence. Ranger explored the water's edge, nose working, living in the eternal present that dogs inhabited so naturally. Did you ever read it? Millie asked. The letter from Dr. Harding. Garrett pulled the envelope from his jacket. Still sealed, still waiting. Not yet. Why not? Because once I read it, it becomes real. The apology, or the justification, or whatever he wrote. It stops being something I can ignore and becomes something I have to deal with. And you're not ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. He turned the envelope over in his hands. But I think maybe that's okay. Maybe some things don't have closure, don't have clean endings. Maybe they just stay complicated. Your friend Foster would say, that's very wise. Foster would say, I'm overthinking it. Millie laughed. It was a good sound. young somehow despite her age, the laugh of someone who'd remembered how. "What will you do with it?" she asked. "Eventually. I'll read it, someday. When it feels right." He tucked the envelope back into his jacket. But not today. They watched Ranger chase dragonflies that stayed just out of reach, watched clouds drift across perfect blue sky, watched the world continue its endless turning, indifferent to human pain and human healing alike. "I think William would have liked you," Millie said suddenly. "He always respected people who did the hard work, who showed up when showing up was difficult." "Thank you. And I want you to know," she turned to face him fully, "I'm grateful, not just for saving my life, but for giving me a reason to want to live it, for showing me that mattering doesn't have an age limit." Garrett felt something loosen in his chest, something he'd been holding tight for years. "You did that yourself, Millie. I just gave you the opportunity. Then we'll call it even." They sat together until the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. When Garrett finally stood to leave, Millie caught his hand. "Come back soon," she said. "Don't let it be 6 months again." "I won't." "Promise, promise," he called Ranger, and the dog bounded over, tongue-lolling, happy and tired, from a good day of simple joy. They walked to the truck together, Garrett's hand resting on the dog's head, feeling the steady warmth of a life lived in partnership. That evening, Garrett returned to his apartment. Small, simple, but no longer quite as empty. He'd bought plants ferns that somehow survived his neglect, had framed a few photos his unit in Kandahar Ranger as a puppy, a recent one of him and Millie at the facility, had started cooking actual meals instead of eating from cans. He fed Ranger, made himself dinner, sat at the small table and looked at the envelope one more time. Not today, he thought, but someday. Later that night, after Ranger had fallen asleep on his bed, Garrett sat at the kitchen table. The envelope rested in front of him, illuminated by a single lamp. Outside, the city hummed with its endless nightlife. Inside, silence wrapped around him like a blanket. He opened the letter slowly. The contents were short, written in Harding's precise handwriting, the ink slightly smudged as if tears had fallen while he wrote. "Garrett, by the time you read this, I'll be gone, either to prison or something worse. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know something. That night in Kandahar, when I pulled you from the fire, I wasn't being brave. I was being selfish. I needed to prove I could still save someone after what happened to Fisher. Needed to believe I wasn't completely broken. You were my redemption once. The man I saved when I couldn't save the boy I killed. I failed you both in the end. Failed everyone. But when I opened those containers, when I pressed that beacon, maybe I saved someone. Maybe I didn't die completely worthless. Take care of the dog. Take care of yourself. And if you ever think of Emmy, don't remember the monster. Remember the surgeon who believed in saving lives, even if he forgot how." Vincent Garrett folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, and then after a long moment he walked to the fireplace. The letter caught fire quickly, curled into ash, disappeared like the man who'd written it. "I remember," Garrett said quietly to the flames. "I remember both." And that, he thought, was the truest form of honesty he could offer. He stood there until the fire died, until only embers remained glowing faintly in the dark. Then he turned away. Ranger lifted his head from his bed, watching. "Come on, boy," Garrett said softly. "Let's get some rest." The dog rose, stretched, padded over to his side. Together they moved through the apartment, turning off lights, settling into the familiar rhythm of evening routine. Garrett lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. About Millie's courage. About Harding's final act. About 10 women who'd been given their lives back. About 54 arrests and a task force that would keep fighting. About a guy who'd barked at an old woman and changed everything. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Agent Kowalski wanted to let you know. Merrick was sentenced today. Life without parole. 12 other officers took plea deals. 2 are going to trial. We're winning. Garrett typed back, "Good. Thanks for the update. Another buzz you should know, we're expanding the task force. Looking for consultants with field experience. If you're interested." Garrett stared at the message for a long time. "Then let me think about it. Take your time. The offer stands." He set the phone down, looked at Ranger, who'd settled on his bed in the corner, amber eyes reflecting the streetlight filtering through the curtains. "What do you think, boy? Ready to do it again?" Ranger's tail thumped once against the bed. "Yes." "Yeah," Garrett murmured. "Me too." He closed his eyes and for the first time in months slept peacefully. 3 weeks later, on a bright August morning, Garrett walked into the FBI field office. Agent Kowalski met him in the lobby, extending her hand. "Glad you could make it. Glad to be here." She led him to a conference room where a dozen people sat around a table, audience analysts, former victims who'd become advocates. Jenna Caldwell smiled when she saw him, gave a small wave. Everyone, Kowalski said, this is Garrett Ashford and Ranger. They're the reason we're all here. The reason we got to start this task force in the first place. The room applauded. Garrett felt his face warm, uncomfortable with the attention. But he nodded acknowledgement. Garrett's agreed to consult on cases involving elderly exploitation, Kowalski continued, and Ranger will continue doing what he does best, detecting threats before they escalate. They spent the next 2 hours discussing active cases, patterns, red flags, ways to identify vulnerable populations before traffickers could reach them. Garrett contributed what he knew, learned from others, felt the familiar sensation of purpose returning. This was what he'd been missing. Not the adrenaline, not the danger, but the sense that his experience, his scars, his ghosts, they all meant something, could be used to help rather than haunt. When the meeting ended, Jenna approached him. Mr. Ashford, I wanted to thank you, personally, for what you did. You don't need to thank me, you're doing the real work now. Only because you gave me the chance, she paused. Mrs. Brennan called me last week. She's been helping me with the support group, sharing her story with other victims. She's incredible. She is. She said you visit her, that you're friends now. Yeah, we are, Jenna smiled. That's good. She deserves good people in her life. You both do. As Garrett and Ranger left the building, stepping into afternoon sunlight, his phone rang. Millie's name on the screen. Hello. Garrett, I hope I'm not interrupting. Never. What's up? I was thinking, would you and Ranger like to come to dinner this weekend? The facility is having a barbecue. Family's welcome. I'd like you to meet some of the people from my group. Garrett felt something warm spread through his chest. We'd love to. Wonderful. Saturday at 6. We'll be there. Good. See you then. The line went quiet. Garrett stood there for a moment, phone still to his ear, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. He looked down at Ranger. The dog looked back, tail wagging slowly. Ready to go home, boy? A bark. Affirmative. They walked to the truck together. The day was perfect, warm, but not hot, sky clear air carrying the scent of water from the Sound. Seattle at its finest. As Garrett drove through the city, Ranger beside him with his head out the window, tongue catching the wind, Garrett thought about the letter, about Harding's final words, about remembering both the good and the evil in people because both were true. He thought about Millie's courage, about 10 women who'd survived, about a task force that would save more, about the hundreds of small decisions that had led to this moment, driving through sunlight with a dog who'd saved his life more times than he could count. And he thought about William Brennan's words spoken through Millie. The measure of a life wasn't how long you lived, but what you did with the time you had. We're doing okay, Garrett said aloud. Aren't we, boy? Ranger pulled his head back inside, looked at Garrett, and barked once. Yes, we're doing okay. That night, Garrett sat on his apartment balcony, beer in hand, watching the sun set over Elliott Bay. The water turned gold, then orange, then deep purple as darkness gathered. Stars began to appear faint against the city's light pollution. Ranger lay beside him, chin resting on his paws, eyes half closed. You knew, Garrett said quietly. From the beginning, you knew Millie needed help, knew something was wrong when no one else did. The dog's ear twitched, listening. William Brennan said soldiers don't quit unless they're dead, and you're the best soldier I've ever served with. He reached down, scratched behind Ranger's ear. Thank you for not giving up, for not letting me give up. Ranger's tail moved, slow, deliberate, acknowledgement. They sat together as night fell completely, as the city's lights multiplied like stars brought to earth, as somewhere in that vast sprawl of humanity, people moved through their lives, some hurting, some healing, some waiting for someone to notice their pain. And Garrett understood finally what his purpose was. Not to save everyone. That was impossible. But to notice, to pay attention, to trust the warning bark, to show up when showing up was hard, to be the person who didn't look away. His phone buzzed. A text from Foster. Heard you signed on with the task force. Proud of you, Ashford. You're where you're supposed to be. He typed back, thanks, Captain, for everything. Another buzz from Millie, can't wait for Saturday. I'm making my famous potato salad. Ranger will love it. Garrett smiled, he'll eat anything, but I'm sure it's great. A third message from Owen, saw you at the FBI today. Glad you're part of the team. We're going to do good work. He responded, we already did. Now we keep doing it. Garrett set the phone down and looked out at the city one more time. Somewhere in the darkness, the Eastern Promise was making its way back across the Pacific, empty now of its human cargo. Somewhere, Merrick sat in a cell facing the rest of his life behind bars. Somewhere, Harding's ashes were scattered to wind or sea, carrying whatever peace he'd managed to find. And here on this balcony, a man and a dog sat together in companionable silence. Two survivors who'd found their way back from the edge. "Think we'll do it again?" Garrett asked. "When the next call comes." Ranger lifted his head, met Garrett's eyes in the darkness, and something passed between them. Understanding deeper than words, loyalty forged in fire, purpose renewed. The dog's tail thumped twice against the concrete. "Yes, and yes again." "Good," Garrett said softly. "Good." A breeze rose from the water, carrying the scent of salt and distance. Above them, a plane descended towards SeaTac lights, blinking red against the stars. Below, the city hummed its endless song of life, continuing, of people arriving and departing, of stories, beginning and ending and beginning again. Garrett closed his eyes and listened. To the wind, to the distant traffic, to Ranger's steady breathing, to the quiet voice inside that said, "You're not done yet. There's more work to do, more people to help, more darkness to push back against." And for the first time in years, that voice didn't sound like burden. It sounded like hope. He opened his eyes, looked at Ranger. "Ready for bed, partner?" The dog stood stretched, shook himself. "Ready." They went inside together. Garrett locked the door, turned off the lights, settled into the familiar evening routine. But before he climbed into bed, he paused at the window, looked out one more time at the city sleeping under its blanket of stars. "Thank you," he said to no one in particular. To Vincent Harding's ghost, to William Brennan's memory, to whatever force had put him in that train station on that cold morning when a dog started barking. "For the second chance, I won't waste it." He turned away from the window. Ranger was already asleep, breathing slow and deep, dreaming whatever dreams military dogs dreamed. Garrett climbed into bed, closed his eyes, and let the darkness take him. And somewhere between waking and sleeping, he could have sworn he heard a voice. William Brennan's voice, though he'd never heard the man speak, saying, "Soldiers never quit. They just keep going, keep showing up, keep doing the work. That's all any of us can do." Garrett smiled in the darkness. "Yes, sir," he whispered. "That's all any of us can do." And he slept, dreamless, peaceful, ready for whatever came next.